Good morning. Welcome to the meeting of the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission of January 25th, 2023. The meeting notice was posted according to the requirements of the Open Meeting Act. The meeting will come to order. Will you call the roll, please?
Thank you. Good morning. First Congressional District Commissioner Seth Phillips.
Yes, here.
Second Congressional District Commissioner Kevin Potter. Third Congressional District Commissioner Charles Ortega.
Here.
Fourth Congressional District Commissioner Chairwoman Lindy Ritz.
Here.
Fifth Congressional District Commissioner Blake Rainey.
Here.
At-large Commissioner Jim Putnam. At-large Commissioner Jerry Hunter.
Present.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. Our next order of business is approval of the minutes. The draft of the minutes of December 7th, 2022 meeting has been sent to you, and a copy is in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as distributed? If not, I'll accept nomination to approve the minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips.
Abstain.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next order of business is item 4, introduction of new commissioner. I will have Director Arties do the honors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. We have ourselves a new member in our presence, Mr. Seth Phillips. Just to give you a little background on some of the moving pieces with the Commissioners. Kevin Potter, who was formerly Congressional District 1 Commissioner, had 2 years left on that term. With the congressional movement here, we have every 10 years. He was moved out of Congressional District 1 boundaries. Of course, he could serve out his 2 years remaining, and so given that Commissioner Conway his term was ending and District 2 was becoming available, the governor saw fit to appoint Kevin Potter to District 2 in a 6-year term at District 2, and that left, of course, District 1 vacant. And the governor saw fit to nominate Seth Phillips to fill the District 1 spot. And then also here in the last week, the governor reappointed Jim Putnam to the at-large seat. And of course, we wish Commissioner Putnam the best with his medical procedure. And I know his knees will be feeling good here in the next week or so, and he looked forward to joining us at the March meeting. But Commissioner Phillips, I'll let you say a little bit about yourself and kind of what your background in the aviation world is.
Morning, everyone. Seth Phillips, out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, mechanical engineer. I work in real estate, and I've been in general aviation for many years now. Excited to be here and grateful to help out the commission as best I can. So thank you guys. Thank you all.
Look forward to you representing that number 2 city here in the state of Oklahoma, Tulsa. No pressure. No pressure.
Right on.
Thank you. And just as an aside, Commissioner Phillips' resume is in your packet. So thank you. We're glad to have you here.
Appreciate that.
The next item, number 5, is introduction of our new aviation program intern. So, Mr. Young, would you like to do the honors?
As you all know, we love the internship program we get to offer here at the Commission, and it's one of my prides and joys to be over that process. Is handing some of the day-to-day stuff over to Thomas and Jace as I focus on some of the stuff that Grace needs my help with. But I always love to take some time to spend a little extra education and drop a little knowledge on our younger folks that are coming through our internship. So this semester we have Mateo Alaman, if you'd like to come up and say just a few words. He's from the University of Oklahoma, and so I'll let him give his own little background and say what he'd like to, but we're really excited to have him on board, and he's already jumped right in the few days that he's been with us.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Mateo Alaman, and I'm a current junior at the University of Oklahoma, double majoring in air traffic management and then also a degree in business management. I look forward to learning a lot about the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission and the role you guys play in supporting the airports in the state of Oklahoma. So I appreciate you allowing me to intern here.
is in your packet. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Director Arties. Item 6, you have quite a few things to cover.
I do have a few things, but not as busy as it normally is, given the holiday season between our December meeting and the January meeting. Kicked off January with the inauguration of Governor Stitt's second term, and I have to say that Mother Nature here in Oklahoma presented us with a nice inauguration for a change. We didn't have to bundle up in 7 layers as you typically do early January for the inauguration. I wasn't shorts weather, but I think I was just in a suit and tie with no jacket on. And I know some of the commissioners were there. I saw Commissioner Ortega and sat next to him, and it was great to hear the governor prepare kind of what his second term is going to look like and some of the things that he's very interested in. Obviously, education and workforce are 2 big pillars for what I think we will see for the next 4 years. So very glad to see that and be able to participate. Followed that up with the Select Oklahoma membership meeting. So Select Oklahoma is the economic development organization. All the towns and communities are members of Select Oklahoma. And given our role and given Airport's role in economic development, we're a member of that organization. They meet monthly. Had a good Economic Development 101 on how, when an RFP comes out from the Department of Commerce, how communities should respond. What are the incentives that they should be able to highlight, so on and so forth. We had our Senate budget hearing on January 11th. They actually came to our office. Typically, most budget hearings, you go to the Capitol and you meet in one of the meeting rooms. But new chairman to the policy side, but existing chairman to the budget side, John Hast, wanted to come out and see the agencies that they say grace over, and so came over to the Aeronautics Commission and hosted most of the members of the Senate Transportation Subcommittee on Appropriations there for about an hour and a half, and had a good conversation about the funding that we have received for the last several years, including the PrEP funds, and where we're looking to go for the FY24 or 2023 calendar year legislative session. January 17th, I was able to participate in the Conversations with Colleagues hosted by South Central Chapter of American Association of Airport Executives, moderated by KSA engineers, and just had a good conversation with our fellow state directors and state aviation officials in our region, represented Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and just kind of bringing up to speed the airports and obviously our closest constituency for what we're seeing in the future, for all the funding that's available at the federal level, to what is most on the front of most airports' minds, and that is FAA reauthorization, which we know expires at the current in the current federal fiscal year. January 18th, we had the OAOA quarterly meeting at the Max Westheimer Airport. That was probably one of the best attended quarterly meetings we've had, and I have to give credit to Alexis Higgins, who's the current OAOA president, and you all know the CEO of the Tulsa Airports system. She had about 40 to 45 people there in the upstairs classroom at Max Westheimer Airport talking about all things aviation aerospace. There's a bunch of interns there. I think Will Rogers had 4 interns. There's a couple other interns there throughout the room. I was glad to see the mix of airport professionals, consultants, fuel providers, and others there talking about the latest and greatest with our airport system. And then last but not least, item number F, and I have this on there because I was originally planning to attend, but that also happened to be the language deadline day for the state legislature, and was trying to review some language for some of the bills that we had. So you'll notice me absent there on the picture, but lo and behold, Sandra Shelton was able to attend and do the American Airlines tour with Senator Hast and some of the members of his committee. And so we want to thank American Airlines for hosting those legislators and taking them on that tour. And I certainly would encourage any of you in the future, as we do host other American Airlines tours, to go on that, because it's a great facility, and they're looking to expand and grow their potential for the Tulsa, Oklahoma area. So, Madam Chair and Commissioners, that concludes my director's report, but I'll stand for any comments or questions.
Okay, hearing none. Item 7 is legislature, congressional, and regulatory updates, and Director Arties and Sandra.
So I'm going to start off and then kick it over to Sandra to finish us up. At the end of the day, I think we see the bill filing deadline come and go, just like we do every legislative session, and over 2,000 bills filed, lots of different topics, ranging from aviation aerospace funding to education, workforce development, and you name it. And of course, we want to be seen as the player for all aviation aerospace legislation. We have our 2 request bills that we've talked to you about before, aero education and advanced air mobility and drones, and those have been filed. Senator Racino is taking those for us. We have a new potential issue that doesn't have a bill yet, but we're discussing it with, of course, our engineer tax credits for aerospace, which is near and dear to our hearts, considering that was one of our chief legislative accomplishments back in the mid-2000s. Tax Commission is taking interpretation on one of the items that does not fit the intent of what we were trying to express when the bill was passed, and so working with Todd Polley, Boeing, and some of the other aerospace companies around the metro area that have experienced some of the negative effects. And I know this isn't the first time we've had an issue with the engineer tax credits and the interpretation of some of the language, and so we're just going to go try and potentially clean that up a little bit. Another bill that was filed by our good friend, Senator Racino, was a name tweak for the agency and taking us from the commission to the department. And so just for your all's perspective, those in state government understand what a commission is. We know it's a state government organization. We know that's the entity that's behind what the commission is. That's the state agency. But when we go to trade shows, when Senator Racino and others talk about the commission, people immediately think about a trade organization, that we're a private nonprofit, or we're promoting for the aviation aerospace industry, and that we aren't the governmental entity that we are. And so his idea was to change the name from commission to department, and that was really it. No tweaks to our mission, no tweaks to the board, but just change us from department to commission and potentially add in the word aerospace to our name. And so I think we're going to talk with Senator Racino about that and kind of see where that bill weaves its way through the process. I suspect that it won't have a whole lot of challenges moving its way through the process, considering it is just a name change. And I think it will help us long-term as an agency when we go out there and we share our mission, we share our responsibilities, that people are going to associate us with, oh, yes, this is a state government organization and not a trade show, or not a trade organization or a nonprofit organization designed to help aviation aerospace. So from there, I'll kick it over. Sandra, you can talk about legislative session from your perspective.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. The Oklahoma House of Representatives completed their filing on Thursday, January 19th for the first session of the 59th Legislature. A total of 1,901 House bills and 44 House joint resolutions were filed. Last year, the Clerk of the House reported 1,482 bills with 18 House joint resolutions and 2 House resolutions. A total of 1,116 Senate bills and 18 Senate joint resolutions were filed. The House is now comprised of 81 Republicans and 20 Democrats. The Senate is comprised of 40 Republicans and 8 Democrats. And we welcome Representative Archer with us today. Representative Archer, would you stand and be recognized? Representative Archer represents the Elk City area and has a great interest in aviation and aerospace, including OSIDA at Burns Flat. And the first session of the 59th Legislature will begin Monday, February 6th at noon. We will be there. I'm sure Representative Commissioner Ortega will also be there with us. And we will have the State of the State from Governor Stitt. In your packet, if you'll look, you will see our legislative tracking. And Andrea, I'll be sending this to Andrea with updates. And Andrea probably sent this to you electronically. These numbers here are hyperlinked to the bills. So when you open the hyperlink, when you click on that, it's going to open to the legislative tracking system, and you will see tabs across there. If you'll look under the tab where it says versions, click the version, and then it'll have like introduced, amended, all of that. So you'll see that, okay? But I'll be tracking that for you. Just some items of interest to you. In House Bill 2461, they're prohibiting the flight of UAS over the state capitol. There's several UAS bills this year, and I'm not sure if that will go to Chairman Hayes' committee or to Public Safety, but we're watching that. And there were some UAS bills that the Aeronautics Commission had some concern for, and so we'll be visiting with the representative who is authoring those bills as well. Also, we wanted to mention to you that the Tulsa Air and Space Museum has sought a bill to give them sales tax exemption. So you're going to see 3 different bills going through the legislature. So I just wanted to let you know that that's what that is about. So we have some other bills that you can read through. If you have any questions about those, I'd be happy to answer anything. You can call me on my cell phone. I'll yield for questions, Madam Chair.
Any comments, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Representative Archer. Hope you come frequently. The next item of business, Chris, with the financial report.
Morning, Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners. Starting out with the financial summary document, as of December 31st, the Commission had an ending cash balance of $12.3 million, the encumbrances totaling $8.1 million. Outstanding reimbursements owed to the agency total about $1 million. The amount of remaining expenditures in the airport construction program that could be incurred this fiscal year totals $4.2 million, provided that those grants are approved. This leaves us with an expected available cash balances after encumbrances and expected income of about $5.3 million. In total fiscal year-to-date expenditures during FY23 were $3.9 million as of the end of December. Moving on to the revenue document. Total statutory revenue collected for December was $580,000. You'll notice that was down a little bit compared to what November and December were, or October and November were. Total statutory revenue collected, though, through December this fiscal year was $5 million compared to $3.3 million for the same time frame last year. So we're still up about 65% over last year. And I will note that excise tax collections this month are back on par with October and November. We're approaching about a $1 million collection this month. So we'll shoot back up this month. Finally, on the 3-year average revenue document, you'll see that revenue collected this fiscal year is currently about $2.3 million more than what our 3-year average is. So again, December was down a little bit, but we're still tracking quite a bit up over the last year and the 3-year average. So, and then final note, Grayson will provide an update on prep here in a little bit, but we did receive those funds into our account last Friday afternoon. So $100,350,000 is sitting in the account and ready for them to spend it. So I'll stand for any questions.
Hearing none, thank you, Chris. The next item of business is airport strategic planning meetings. Director Arties and Nick.
Madam Chair, I will kick this item off and just talk about a few of these and then turn it over to Nick for a little bit more detailed conversation. When we do these airport strategic planning meetings, this is us and the agency going to visit these airports to help them plot their course for the next 5, 10, 20 years. Sometimes it's just about a specific project. Sometimes it's about the overall goals of what the airport wants to do. Our first and foremost, we want to serve aviation air transportation. That's what we want to make sure. We want to make sure the pilots, the commercial entities that are flying in and out of, whether it's charter operations or private businesses, flight schools, MRO companies, you name it. We want to be able to make sure those folks are served appropriately by the caliber of airport that they happen to be. Secondly, though, is we want these airports to be economic development tools for the community. And so at the end of the day, these airports are industrial assets to recruit new businesses. Even if it's a 3,000-foot runway, they can still go out and recruit, even though it might be a small A&P shop or an agricultural sprayer or a flight school. Every airport plays a role in the economic development world. And so that's what we're trying to stress when we go out and we do these airport site visits. I'll just take a couple of them. Okemah Airport, October 21st. This is one of our newer airports. Was built back in the 2012, 13, 14 time period. It does not have any based aircraft. And what we were talking about on October 21st was trying to figure out a way for Okemah to be able to tap into our hangar program. And obviously it's been a challenge. They, like a lot of small towns and communities, have a lot of needs. Their biggest one happens to be water. And they've had to do a $20 million water and sewer system upgrade recently on somewhat of an emergency basis. And so we were talking to them about different ways we can go about funding a hangar system to get them to that magic 10-based aircraft level so that they can get their federal funding flowing again. I'll also take the Kingfisher item. On December 5th, Sandra and I met with Senator Yeck and Representative Dobrinsky, right, who are very stalwart supporters of the Kingfisher Airport. As we know, Kingfisher is also one of the newer airports that we have in the system. Grass strip turned into a paved 2,800-foot runway, all on the backs of state and local government, because this is not an airport that's in the federal system. We had worked with Senator Inhofe's office for the last 5 years, trying to get them added to the federal system unsuccessfully. Of course, we will continue that with our Senator Langford, Senator Mullen, and Congressman Lucas to see if we can continue to get that airport out of the federal system and make them eligible for federal dollars. But we were talking there about how they can go about extending their runway. They are the only airport in the county, and although at 2,800 feet right now, they can accommodate single-engine traffic, some agricultural sprayers, and some very, very light twin activity. They need a longer runway. And so we were talking about ways to go about getting that longer runway because they don't have ability to tap into federal funds. And so you'll see in an upcoming agenda item one of the things that we're doing to help them out. But we've had conversations with their senator and rep, conversations with our Department of Commerce, and other entities on how we can go about funding said extension. So those are the two things that I'll tell you. And then, Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you for some of the other discussion.
Thank you, Director, Madam Chair. To take some of these other ones here, going back up to Atoka Airport, the November 14th meeting. This was more of a general update for the City Council that we participated in. It was primarily their consultant that was selected for this airport. As you may recall, this is Atoka's current airport there is pretty constrained. They're landlocked on basically all sides. They're stuck at about 3,000 feet. And they have a lot more traffic that's trying to come in there. As we know, we have some locals that like to fly in. Reba just opened her new place down there. And obviously the city's wanting to do what they can to capture the tourism dollars that might be able to help attract folks to the city, the town, and grow it into a nice little city in their area. And so by finding the perfect airport location for that, we knew that would set them up for long-term success going well into the 20, 30, 40, 50 years out, rather than just the next, 1 to 5 that we typically look at most scrupulously. And so as we realized that, as we were working through the 1 to 5 there, we realized that we really need to take a step back and see what the actual needs of the city were for their airport. And so that's why we've been going through this airport site selection study, and that's to provide FAA with all the information that they would need to confirm that that's the best location for an airport. That includes all the air spacing analysis that goes with that. They have to look at the terrain. And then, of course, the city's looking at traffic flows and those types of things to ensure that not only are the FAA requirements satisfied, but is that location really going to be great for what they're looking for in an airport location to serve their town and grow it. So they're looking more for not only just an airport, but also almost a small industrial type of complex that they could really tap into and use to bring more businesses into the area while also trying to bring those tourism dollars in as well. So that went really well. Council was really excited about the update. We're down to about 3 locations. To be completely honest with you, we know from the beginning about where that would work the best because of the terrain down there, but we do have to cross our T's and dot our I's to make sure the planning is all done under the right circumstances so that FAA is ready to approve that whenever we get ready to actually start moving the dirt to get that built. Following that, on November 16th, we went out to the West Woodward Airport, Guyman, and Buffalo airports. It was a great little trip. Obviously, as Director mentioned, we have some prep dollars that's Woodward's looking to spend there at their facility. So that conversation was primarily to determine what do they already have on the facility in terms of utilities, buildings, those types of things, and then what are the things that they really need to solidify the industrial park up there. And so whether that's a matter of planning for the land use of aeronautical versus non-aeronautical and what that looks like going into the future so that they can reserve that land so that they don't, get too far ahead of themselves in one regard and then wind up hamstringing themselves and not having the aeronautical use or even some of the industrial use land that they reserved whenever they get ready to actually put somebody there. So they have a lot of great things in motion already. And during that conversation, we really worked to try to give them the tools they need to prioritize the projects that they're looking to pursue. As we know, these funds have a timeline on them, and so we want to make sure that we're getting the funds out the door quickly so that we don't run out of time. But two, we also don't want to just throw everything out at once, which then increases the costs and all those types of things. So it's weighing getting these projects done quickly and efficiently, and also not trying to throw all of the dollars that are ready to go toward those projects at once so that we don't add to the inflation issues and supply chain issues that we've already been seeing. So it's been the conversations of balance and how to strategically plan for each of those projects as we work down the road. At Guyman, similar conversations, but primarily in this regard, trying to figure out where to build a new hangar and trying to convince the city that that is it's a great time to do so, because obviously we have funds available for hangars that we haven't had in the past, and we know that capacity has been an issue in the area, and they also want to bring in some additional businesses to the area, whether it be running their own FBO to attract the transcontinental type of flights to say, hey, yeah, you can stop in and get cheap fuel and have facilities here at Guyman. And so it's what do they want there that helps their city, but also helps their airport. So whether that's people coming in, flying into the city itself to go, check out the nice steakhouse they have out there, or if it's just trying to take a break from the hustle and bustle of the city, trying to help them market themselves, but also plan for what they need as they work on down the road, because they do have some constraints there in terms of facilities there on the aprons as well as the hangars. So trying to get them off of High Center and trying to figure out what they want and how we can help provide them the tools that they need to then get on down the road. So we've been working with former Commissioner Ray on that, as well as the locals there and any other stakeholders. So that was a great meeting, and hoping to have some follow-up with them soon to try to get that going. At Buffalo, their biggest items are their apron out there. They're trying to get that rehabilitated and extended a little bit. It's a little bit constrained. It's a fairly small airport, but emergency use is a big thing out there. So whether that's med flights or helicopter flights, they do have a nice little helicopter pad out there as well. And so helping them prioritize their next steps with their FAA dollars that they have, but also in how to generate community relationships and partnerships so that they can meet the local match required on those FAA dollars. Because for a town like Buffalo, sometimes that can be a big lift to come up with the 10% match to get the airport the work that it needs done. So we help try to connect some dots for them out there, and also just open up a line of communication so that if we can help step in and be a part of those conversations with the other local potential partners that they have out there, that we can help facilitate that as best we can. And also just helping them prioritize and understand what's available to them from the FAA level, and then what those match requirements are, and then what the need is, so that they can know who to reach out to really get across the finish line with those. So looking forward to getting the apron fixed up out there, get them a nice apron and taxi lane to their hangar facilities, and then eventually trying to get them to where they can get an AWAS facility out there with their FAA dollars as well. Because that is a big need, but the problem with that is the maintenance costs once you get it in. And that can be a big lift for the locality as well. So those are kind of the things that we're looking to solve out there. At Clinton Sherman Airport on December 1st, again, this is more dollars going out there for the industrial park and how best to spend them, prioritization of what their needs are in terms of hangar facilities to support businesses out there. There is a big company that's going to be looking to paint some pretty big iron out there. And so they have some leases that are already underway, but they're also looking at some pretty aggressive expansion plans. And so what we're trying to do is help facilitate those plans so that we don't hamstring the growth that's out there, but also helping the executive director understand and reserve the land that he does have available. Again, just in an effort to not hamstring ourselves in 10, 20 years because of decisions that we're making today. Because we want to make sure that he has a good fleet mix. You want general aviation to be able to operate out there with the big iron that they're trying to bring in, but you also want to make sure that you don't have a huge area of apron that's reserved for somebody that may or may not build on it. And so we're trying to help through that process. We'll have be kicking out a small planning study to try to help prioritize those projects with OSIDA and their engineer, and then we'll be working hand in hand with them to get that underway. And that's thankfully pretty easy because we office right next door to their engineer. So great open communication with Delta Consultants as they'll be working on that project. At El Reno Regional, as you may recall, here about a year or two ago, we were starting toward a terminal building. The high prices of bids that started coming out after the pandemic kind of roadblocked that a little bit. The city wasn't sure kind of the route they wanted to take, so we did give them a little bit of time to figure out what type of terminal building they wanted, what their options were in terms of, you know, refurbishing what they might have there versus building new. And so they did a local study that gave them an idea of what rehabilitation costs to new construction costs would be to one of their hangars out there, and they have determined that going forward with a new facility is going to be more cost effective, particularly because of the tail heights that could be accommodated out there, and they didn't realize the difference in cost to retrofit a bigger door and make that work on what they have versus just demolishing and building new. And so we do want to be cognizant of the history that's out there, but they do have some other round top hangars that are very similar that'll still be able to stand and represent that history, but they are looking toward moving forward with the new terminal building, so we should be seeing that project come down the road as they get ready to start design on that. That will probably be here in the next 2 or so years, as we probably will work to address their runway rehab and lighting issues that they have, and then they can work toward that design that we initially had coming up this year in the ACP. You'll see that move just a little bit in the March and May meetings. So trying to help them again with the funding options that are available to them, and then prioritizing the projects they know that they need. And then on Monday, we went to South Grand Lake, Pawhuska, and Bartlesville. Again, I think these were more of a reconvening of conversations that had been started. For South Grand Lake Regional Airports, we've spoken a little bit about the land acquisition they're trying to go after out there to extend their runway and be able to pursue a full parallel taxiway out there. The growth out there has been absolutely tremendous, and we're just trying to help get them to where they need to be so that they can have a full parallel. You don't have to do the U-turns right there on the runway. We had to do so, and if they were on a busy day, then we certainly wouldn't want to have been there long. And so they can get filled up pretty quick up there, especially in the summer. And so we're trying to, again, get all the different things that they have in the queue lined up so that they're ready to get moving on the land acquisition, are able to meet the upcoming discretionary FAA match on their parallel taxiway system, and then any other small things that they were needing assistance on, just kind of overall planning for some of the side things. You know, how big of an apron do you need once we get started on the parallel taxiway, because that will take a little bit of that apron that's currently available away. And so it's, again, we know what we have next on the docket, but what comes after that. So great meeting with them. I think that our next meeting at Pawhuska Airport takes the cake for, as you can see here, this is only a portion of the people who are waiting for us in the community center. I can tell you that I originally printed off 6 copies of a document that we were going to take. I thought, you know what, I'll go ahead and print 12. There were probably 40 people at this meeting. And so Hank Benson out there in Pawhuska really drummed up some good community interest and got a lot of the airport stakeholders out there in the room to hear what's going on out there. They really want to pursue a runway extension. They want a full parallel. They want to utilize that for their tourism opportunities. Again, Pioneer Woman's big in Pawhuska, so you got a lot of people driving out there. Why shouldn't they be flying in? They also have a lake just to the north, and so they're looking to set up, you know, what kind of things can they set up in terms of Airbnbs right next to the airport, or you know, shuttles into town from the airport. They have 2 newer companies that are doing spray operations that are based out of the airport. So they have a lot of good things that are going on out there, and this was a way to get all of the stakeholders in one room, hear the thoughts and conversations that are going on, so that it's not just us, Hank, and the city manager type of thing. We wanted to get external thoughts and suggestions, but also they had Chief Standing Bear was there to talk a little bit about what Osage Nation is doing, and their educational director was there to talk about the AOPA program that they've implemented. Hank's been doing a great job by getting, I think they have about 8 students in the program in Pawhuska, so they want a hangar out there by the airport so that they can do hands-on. They want to be able to work on airplanes. There's a newer gentleman that's based out there that's not an AMP, but in all honesty, he just works on everything. And so he does work, gets his IA to come in, sign it off, and then, there he goes. And, but he, being a auto mechanic, he just wants to be able to provide the opportunity for kids to be on the airport and work on planes. And so it's all of those different things, just connecting those people to the right folks so that they can get those, in front of the right people so that they can actually get those implemented rather than just have them talk about it. And so there's been a lot of, I think it's been great since I was, in college to now. It was been a lot of talk about all the things we want to do, and I think over the past 3 to 4 years to now, and certainly going into the future, it's a lot of doing. And so it's really cool to see that change from all the stuff we've been talking about doing and getting folks involved, and what people are doing on the ground to actually make that happen in very unique ways that, sometimes it's as easy as a quick conversation. And to see that come to fruition has been really great, and it also is a reminder of how difficult I can make things with that. We can often think things too much before we just put them into action. And so it's really cool to see Pawhuska doing what they're doing, because it feels very much like a great just grassroots effort, just like South Grand Lake, to make something happen that the locals would be like, well, why not? Why not us? And so that's been really cool to see. Our last meeting there was at Bartlesville Municipal Airport on Monday, and that was a reconvening of a taxiway project and trying to get them a hangar set up out there so that they can attract even more business. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. So, well, they're working on it. They don't have it yet, but that's what I'm saying is they're trying to get there. And so usually the cool thing about that, though, is if you give them a call, from what I hear, they got a group of about 30 that's coming out here in a couple months. So they, they pull together church buses and whatever the case may be and get folks over to town. So they don't have an official shuttle just yet, but if you call, they can accommodate.
Questions? Okay, thank you. And if you would like to stay up for the next item, upcoming projects for calendar year '23.
Certainly, Madam Chair. You guys have heard all of these before. These are existing projects in the ACP. This is simply just a summary of what we anticipate bringing before you for grant approval this year. And so I won't spend too much time on any of these because you guys have seen them before. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to stop me. Also, if at any time you see anything in the ACP that you have any questions on, concerns on, just don't understand, more than welcome to give me a call anytime. Be happy to talk through those. Here we have the current slate of our hangar program. I will say that this will likely change come the March-May timeframe because we'll have more to add. And then we will be looking to bring these particular projects before you for grant or loan approval this fiscal year. So we have Claremore Regional, who's seeking a 100 by 75 box hangar. I think that's modified a little bit to about 100 by 60 at this point. But as you'll see, some of these sizes and those types of things, they will change as we get closer to implementation. And that's mainly because when we're normally working through the ACP, as you know, it's a 1 to 5 year document. Usually we're planning, we're throwing projects on the tail end of that at 4 to 5 years. So we know we have several years to plan for what that eventually is going to look like once it's into the 1 to 3, which we consider more concrete. If it's in the 1 to 3, it's not going to change too much usually. With this, we got funding that we weren't necessarily aware that we were going to be getting, and so we have to go to airports and ask them for a pretty quick turnaround. Hey, can you guys go to design right now and get us something by March? And so you will see that a lot of times it's more of a high planning level kind of tabletop conversation for these numbers. Then once we get into that design and looking to actually design the project out, that's whenever we'll start to get those design numbers back and get more solidified information on actual size, actual anticipated cost. But these are pretty good engineering level estimates from a very high level, we'll put it that way. And so it's a Claremore Regional, as I mentioned, about a 100 by 60 box hangar. As they work through that process, our portion of that, it will be about a $48,000 grant. The Clinton Regional Airport is looking to replace a box hangar that was destroyed in a tornado. This is approximately 90 by 70 or so. They're looking at what will work best for what they had there versus what their apron space is. And so that we anticipate our portion of that be about somewhere around $300,000. At Enid Woodring Regional, they are pursuing a 120 by 120 box hangar. It's a $745,000 grant that's anticipated. At Purcell Municipal, they're doing a string of 50 by 50 box hangars. They'll all be conjoined into one structure, and we anticipate that'll be about a $436,000 grant to them for that, for our portion. This is based off of the anticipated 40% levels for our grants that we discussed last meeting. At Stillwater, they will be pursuing a loan option there for about 100 by, they've gone back and forth. They're really ironing theirs out. They have a hangar plus office space that they'll be pursuing, and so our portion of that will be somewhere in the $1 million range. But that's for a very large box hangar with some finished office space as well. At South Grand Lake Regional, they are pursuing a grant for about $170,000 to add another 60 by 60 box hangar out there. That's what their bread and butter out there. Anytime they put a 60 by 60 up, it's pretty well leased out by the time they advertise. And so that's everything for the hangar program. And then, as we said, as I mentioned before, we'll likely be adding some more to that in the March and May timeframe, thanks to the $14 million that was granted to us for the hangar program. And so we have a application deadline that will come up at the end of this month. And so we're looking forward to seeing some more additional submissions to try to get those lined out and have those scheduled over the next, this fiscal year and on into next. For the various locations grant, this is our standard preliminary engineering report grant that we get from FAA every year. We spend, our match for that is 10%, so we anticipate somewhere between about $400,000 to $500,000 for the 4 to 5 PERs. Those are to be determined as we work with Ben and Kelly to understand what the discretionary projects are coming up in the 26 to 27 fiscal year timeframe. And again, what those do is those help us get a good, a firm estimate of the scope and the cost of those projects, so that whenever we get ready to move forward with the FAA discretionary project, we don't get surprised by bids whenever they come back 20-30% more than what we might have expected. So that's been a great program we've been doing for a long while now, since before I got here. So it's served us well, and we'll continue to do that with FAA. And moving on to Ardmore Municipal, this is their parallel taxiway project. So this federal discretionary project. This one, since they have some prep dollars and those types of things, we've been working on scheduling and phasing of these as well. But in terms of the discretionary project that we're anticipating, it'll be about a $5.4 million project cost, with us covering the 5%, half the 10% match for the locality. Blackwell Tonkawa Municipal. This is a project to rehabilitate and widen runway to 75 feet. Again, this is a FAA project. We'll participate in half the local match, our portion being about $110,000 of that. At El Reno Regional, this is a project to rehabilitate their runway and install LED runway lights. They've been having some pretty, they have a lot of issues with their lights out there here lately. Fun fact, OG&E cut the power out on us at 10 a.m. whenever we were there for a meeting. And so we cared about the final hour of our meeting there in the dark, which was just fine. Actually worked out really well, but it just kind of put the cap on it. Oh, I guess they really aren't kidding whenever they say they have some electrical issues out here. So we saw a line of about 8 trucks that were ready to get underway whenever we were rolling into town. So, but that's affected their older runway lighting, as well as their older PAPIs. And so to do that all at once, we're just going to knock that out, get them updated, and then have that all ready to go, because their PAPIs also aren't currently at the correct, 3-degree glide angle. I think it's at a 2% at the moment. So that'll be about $570,000. It'll be a portion of an FAA match, and then an additional state grant for that one to get everything done at one time. McAllister Regional Airports, looking to construct a terminal building. With our new splits there going up to $1 million, that's anticipated a $2 million project. Our portion being 50% of that. Obviously, as we get into design, we'll get a better idea of the full scope of what they're looking for out there. At Westheimer, this is a project to replace the air traffic control tower. Funding levels for this will kind of depend on FAA, but we are anticipating it's about a $9 million, $10 million project, and we'll do half the local match on that, anticipated right now at about $450,000. Ponca City, looking to construct a new terminal building at a cost of about $3 million. Again, as they go through the design process, they're in the middle of that right now. We'll learn a little bit more about what that cost looks like and what that layout looks like as well. So I should be able to provide you with an updated floor plan, because obviously they're going to want to be able to keep Enrique's happy. So keep that open, keep that going. And in addition to that, on this next project, this would be to expand the apron to basically take up that the area that the terminal building currently is. Gives them more parking space, lets those jets have a good wingspan so that they can take up a little bit more room there than is currently available. Project for that's another FAA project, anticipated about $1.5 million, with us half the local match at $75,000. Sallisaw Municipal, anticipating that we will rehabilitate the apron and taxiway with a state project. Total for that for us be about $200,000, and that's 95% of the project cost. And then the second one out there at Sallisaw, this is kind of the partnering project for this, is the FAA project, and that is a project to do the runway lights, the windsock, and the vault. Our portion of that anticipated about $100,000, about a $600,000 total project cost. Reason we do that so we can not have to worry about some intricacies on the grant paperwork side of things. And so the easier that I can make Michelle's life, the better we all are. And she runs the show whenever it comes to those grants, so I just try to do what she tells me to do in that regard. Makes my life easier that way. And then Seminole Municipal, we are looking to realign the parallel taxiway system out there. About a $3.5 million FAA project, in which we'll cover half the local match of $175,000. This is the portion of that land acquisition there at South Grand Lake that I mentioned here in this next project. And so, as you can see, there's a couple different plots out here. They are still going through the process of determining exactly how much of that land that they're going to need. But for the primary areas to protect the RSA and do the bare minimum on this road relocation, what this road relocation does is allow us that full protection of the runway safety area, so that they can utilize the full length of the runway without, the declared distances and all that kind of stuff. Insurance companies and jets don't necessarily like that you only have 4,300 feet that's published, and so they want to get to that full 5,000 so that they can help out their folks that are getting calls from their insurance company whenever they see them flying there. So that one we anticipate somewhere around a $80,000 project. It's a 95.5 state project, and that will assist an upcoming FAA project for that parallel taxiway. Because as you might understand, FAA doesn't necessarily want you to go to the full end of that runway there if you technically can't use it. So we're trying to get all our ducks in a row so that we can pursue that full extension there. Tulsa Riverside Airport, this is phase 2 to reconstruct the connector taxiways for their primary runway. This is an old picture, so I do apologize, but basically the north portion of that is what we were able to fund this past fiscal year. And then the south portion of that is what they're going to be looking to do on phase 2. Again, another FAA project. Basically, I got a call as they were bidding this out from Glenn Bowles and said, hey, we need a phase 2, so let's go ahead and plan for it next year so we can get all this done. And so we'll participate with our 5% match there. At West Woodward, this is a project to construct new connector taxiways. Just under $1 million. This is to fix some non-standard items there on the north end. As you can see, there's that intersection, and not necessarily really a great way to make the FAA happy in terms of how you utilize those runways up there. And so what we're doing is we are standardizing the connector taxiways there, making sure they have their, and making sure that they have their 90-degree approaches to the runways there. And then, of course, as I'm sure some local pilots are going to be mad, that runway, that crosswind runway there will be shortened as well to take that threshold on up to where that connector is there on the north side. Our portion of that's anticipated somewhere around $200,000. And for that, I believe I stand for any questions.
Okay, hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Director Arties, you're going to talk about prep.
Bring all my notes up here with me for this. Given that prep is the largest investment that we've seen, we are going to keep it on the agenda for the foreseeable future. We're going to keep our legislative friends updated, hopefully on a quarterly basis, of the various work that we're doing for the prep funds. As you all know and have heard in past meetings, we had 4, we'll call them mega projects that were directed to us by the legislature that soaked up a majority of that $100 million that Chris had mentioned was deposited in our account last Friday. One project at Ardmore Municipal for $22.35, and then 3 other projects at $20 million each, one for Woodward, one for the Will Rogers MRO hangar, and then one for the Tulsa Tower. As you heard from Nick, we did visit Woodward on November 16th. We discussed with them the various projects. I think they were as surprised as anybody for receiving that $20 million, and so they were not as prepared as Ardmore or Will Rogers or Tulsa was, and so we're trying to convince them to break up their $20 million into 5 or 6 different projects that are supporting economic development, industrial development there at the air park, whether that's hangars, whether that's a runway extension, whether that's a new terminal building. I think there's plenty of projects out there that we can discuss that are going to help economic development. I know they're in conversations with flight schools, trying to get some flight schools to come out there. They just recently had several people in Northwest Oklahoma tell them, hey, look, we're interested, we want to learn how to fly, and kind of that renaissance, that resurgence of people that are excited about aviation up in the northwest part of the state. And as we all know from former Commissioner Mike Ray, who lives in Guyman, northwest part of Oklahoma is still part of Oklahoma. We can't forget about them just because they live in the Panhandle or the Great Northwest beyond. We have the Ardmore project. We met on December 19th. Of course, they are a little bit further along in their cargo discussions. Commerce is paying for the rail and multimodal improvements, and of course, we're looking at airside and cargo logistics improvements. We're kind of settling on about 4 projects, 2 design, 2 construct. The first part of the projects will hopefully be designed this spring, bid out sometime this summer. That will be taxiway and apron improvements. And then phase 2 will be other improvements to future taxiways, some roadways, some utilities, and other logistic needs that the airport's going to have to fully implement their cargo vision and start bringing in cargo traffic on a regular basis. And so, of course, as we get a little bit more down the flight path on these projects, we'll be coming to you all with these projects, approving them, entering into grant agreements like we normally do. The only difference will be because the legislature directed us, these will be 100% projects, 100% funded by these state funds. Last but not least, is Will Rogers. We met with them on December 20th to discuss the 3-bay AAR MRO hangar. Of course, we know our friends at AAR very well. They are looking to expand their MRO business. They've had a 20-year partnership with Alaska Airlines, bringing in their 737s. And as we know, the 737 family is growing with the MAX 10. And so some of the aircraft that AAR is bringing in can't fit in their existing hangars. We're transitioning from a CRJ 200, 700, ERJ 170, 175 to the larger aircraft, and their hangars just cannot accommodate those. And so that's what this project would do, would be to combine some funding from private entities such as AAR with this $20 million from the state to build a 3-bay 737 hangar that will bring in more maintenance lines and about 175 to 200 jobs additional that AAR is going to create. We're also hopeful that this will bring in more direct routes. Obviously, as Alaska Airlines has more maintenance happening here in Oklahoma City, it just makes more logistics sense to be able to have those more direct routes to the West Coast that I know Alaska serves quite well. I didn't mention anything about Tulsa. We have not had any meetings with Tulsa recently, but of course, their tower project is currently under design and moving through the FAA process with determining what is going to be needed from a staffing level, from an equipment level, and some of the reviews that FAA is going to have to do on this tower. I suspect, though, that project doesn't need a whole lot of babysitting. I know Alexis and her team have that going quite well, and I've been a part of some of the previous FAA meetings that they've had going back several years, and so I suspect these projects are all going to be able to be successful moving forward. We know we have a deadline to hit on when we're supposed to spend these funds and implement these funds, This is not just something that's going to sit in the account. We want to get these dollars in the ground, in infrastructure, and be able to see some groundbreakings this spring and summer, to be honest with you. So, prep being a very important thing, there are discussions about future investments in industrial parks at the state legislature. And of course, we will keep our eyes and ears out and open for other industrial developments that the legislature may decide that they would want to invest in. And so, prep, it's been a great tool. It's been a great tool for investment in industrial parks. If you paid attention to the news, our friends at the Department of Commerce and Brent Kissling will tell you there's really only one industrial park that can handle mega projects right now, and we're hoping that these prep funds and ARPA funds that the legislature has doled out will be able to increase the industrial parks and industrial components. They'll be able to compete for future mega projects and mega companies that want to come to the state of Oklahoma and set up shop or relocate their business to the great state of Oklahoma. So, Madam Chair, Mr. Commissioners, that stands my prep update. I'll stand for any questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Hearing none, thank you very much. Next item, number 12, preliminary engineering report for the Kingfisher Airport runway extension. Nick Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we mentioned, and Director kind of spoke about a little bit earlier in one of his items, working with the legislature to determine the best route forward for Kingfisher and what funding mechanisms may be available for their runway extension in order to provide them with a better idea of what that full cost would be. We are seeking the approval of entering into a contract for a preliminary engineering report for the Kingfisher Airport. Much like with our FAA discretionary projects, this is something that we can go through. Their engineer will go through, take some sampling, do environmental or geotech to understand what is needed, what's there versus what's needed to get their extension fully completed. For the PER, the total cost for this is anticipated to be about $97,090. This is a little bit different from our FAA ones because obviously they're a state-only airport. And so we're seeking to do this at a 95.5 proposition, with the sponsor share being $4,855. And again, this is just to get a full understanding of what the cost and scope of that runway extension would be based off of the landscape and the soil composition at the facility. And I certainly stand for any questions, but staff recommends approval.
Any questions? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second? All those in favor, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Excuse me. Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next item, 13, the 2022 Oklahoma Women in Aviation and Aerospace Celebration Report.
Thank you,
Sandra
Commissioners.
Shelton.
I made a list because there's so much to talk about this event. First of all, we want to thank the Oklahoma Department of Transportation Video Division. They did an incredible job, and we had some audio problems on the day of our event because it was such a large hangar. We had 800 people in attendance, and so I would encourage all the commissioners to go back and watch the live stream on the YouTube channel for the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission because their Strategic Communications Video Division did an incredible job. It looks completely professional. It looks like the Oscars. It's amazing. So I was visiting with Jessica Brown, their director, and told them that they needed to submit that for an award because they did an incredible job. So we extend our thanks to Eric Leslie and his team. December 9th at Tulsa Riverside campus, the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission, in partnership with Tulsa International Airport, Spirit Aerosystems, and the Oklahoma Air and Space Forces Association, presented the 2022 Oklahoma Women in Aviation and Aerospace Day event. You may recall, some of you who have been on the commission, in 2017, Oklahoma passed a law. Commissioner Ortega was then in the legislature, and I know he voted yes. And they passed a law, Senate Bill 230, that would put in state statute forever that to recognize the contributions of women in aviation and aerospace. And we did that because we want to encourage young girls to explore aviation and aerospace careers. And so it was December 9th in statute after the Pearl Carter Scott, that was her birth date. Pearl Carter Scott was the youngest woman to hold a pilot's license in the United States, and she was 12 when she learned to drive a car and was 13 when she got her pilot's license with Wiley Post on the fields of Marlow, Oklahoma. And a wonderful partnership we had with the Chickasaw Nation. Pearl Carter Scott was Chickasaw and was in the Chickasaw legislature up until her passing. And so the Chickasaw Nation worked with Paula Keaty, and they developed a brochure. It's on your desk there. You can see that. That was distributed to all 800 participants. And I want to thank the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission staff. They did an incredible job that day. I could not live without Michelle Bozeiden and Paula Keaty and Andrea Post and Clarissa, and all of the men were there, and they were ushering, and we moved 300 people through a keyhole in 30 minutes, and it was a tight little space there, and we fed 800 people in 30 minutes. So that's pretty incredible. Our caterer did an outstanding job. We'd also like to thank the Air and Space Forces Association. Dan Onesorge and his group helped us this year. And Alexis Higgins and her team were our partners in Tulsa. They always help us on this event, and they did a great job as well. And I wanted to say something about Spirit Aerosystems. Spirit Aerosystems came as our presenting partner, and they weren't just there for us financially. They assisted us. They sent a whole group of men over to set up tables and to break down tables. And it's just those partnerships with our aerospace companies that really make this event special. So our keynote this year was Captain Deborah Hecker and Captain Beth Powell from American Airlines. And a funny story about that, Spirit Aerosystems was going to send their CEO to speak for us. And 2 weeks before the event, she was unable to attend. And I had called and sent email messages to Captain Beth Powell. I guessed her email address at American Airlines because she flew a flight in August of 2022. She flew Gigi Coleman, who's pictured here, who is the great niece of Bessie Coleman. They did a flight to salute Bessie Coleman because it's been about 100 years since she, had her time there. So Captain Powell flew this flight, and it was all African-American women, and they flew from Dallas to Phoenix. So I emailed Beth Powell, and I was like, and this was in the summer, and I was, I need you to come, and I need you to speak. And so Alexis calls me, and I was like, oh my gosh, Spirit Aerosystems, the lady's not coming. And Alexis says, well, I met this lady named Deborah Hecker, and she's a captain, and we were on a panel together, and she's amazing. And she wants to bring her friend Beth Powell. I don't know who that is. I was like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest thing ever. So, I get excited about this stuff. So she came. It was a great fireside chat, and Gigi Coleman also came and took lots of pictures with our guests. And so I just want to thank publicly American Airlines for assisting us with that, and Alexis with Tulsa International Airport. Saved the day. So we were so happy to have her. Tulsa Air and Space Museum brought exhibits, and the OAOA and 99 award winners were, for the Pearl Carter Scott Award for General Aviation was Captain Jane Morris from Ponca City. The Geraldine Cobb Award for military aviation was Lieutenant Janet Jo Jeffries Means Tompkins from Durant. And Dr. Shannon Lucid Award for commercial aviation and aerospace went to our very own Teresa Camp, a 99 and Boeing engineer. So we want to thank all of our partners. The live stream was visited by people in Oklahoma, New York, Texas, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Maryland, and Wisconsin. So we're just so proud of that, our 40 community partners, and next year we'll be at the 137th Air National Guard Base at Will Rogers World Airport. It'll be December 8th, and we're looking forward to having everyone there. I would stand for any questions.
Questions, comments? I think those of you know that Sandra also is absolutely critical to this and was appropriately recognized, and we're all very proud.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Thank you.
Item 14, OAOA membership. Director Arties.
Just a quick comment on the previous item. Sandra is like a duck. On top of the water, it's calm, cool, and collected. But under the water, those feet can be going 600 miles an hour. And I remember the conversation when she pulled me into her office after she heard the bad news about the keynote speaker. And then I also got called into her office a couple days later when I heard the news about the two captains from American Airlines that were going to be joining us. And it was like a roller coaster ride. It really was. But it was a good roller coaster ride, and it went successful, and everybody, I think, loved Women in Aviation Day that was there. And yes, we did get to sneak one in on Sandra, unbeknownst to her, when Senator Racino was able to present her with a citation from the legislature. And so, as you all know, Sandra lives, bleeds, and dies that event. And at the end of the day, she really does a good job. And it takes a village, takes a team. And I'm just so thankful that you all are able to empower us to be able to put on an event like that for the aviation aerospace community here in the state. But to item 14, the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association. As you all know, this is our closest friends, our constituency that we serve here in Oklahoma. And this year, the OAOA Annual Conference will be held March 26th through 29th in Monkey Island, Oklahoma. Estimated cost of our membership, $6,500. Staff recommends approval. I will stand for any questions.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Second.
Hearing first and second. You call the roll, please.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 15.
Next item up, item 15, is the sponsorship of our own Aero Day Oklahoma. Moving forward, obviously, the commission likes to sponsor our own events, and we want to bring this before you for a $2,500 sponsorship. This is our big day at the Capitol, 9:30 to 2 p.m. I encourage each one of you to attend if possible. This is an opportunity for us to get before the legislature to bring aviation aerospace to the Capitol Rotunda to show the importance of why we do what we do in the legislature and being the champion for all things aviation aerospace. Last year was a great opportunity. Had the governor there to speak, had the COO of American Airlines there to speak, and had over 200 students, somewhere about there. To be able to speak, and so a great opportunity for us to get in front of the legislature, and I think it was one of the best days at the Capitol of any industry, given the fact that we were able to flood the Capitol. So staff recommends approval for that sponsorship, and I will stand for any questions. And Sandra, if you don't mind moving the slide forward.
Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any
Commissioner
further
Phillips.
questions? Call the roll, please.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Next up, item 16.
Item 16. So you all will see in a future agenda item, we partner with our friends at the Department of Commerce at the MRO Americas Trade Show. One of the coolest and neatest features of MRO Americas is that they bring students from various maintenance programs from across the country to compete on everything from engine rebuilds to sheet metal to electronics. You name it, it is the Olympics of aviation and aerospace maintenance. And the Tulsa Tech aviation team is pretty well known at the MRO America's competition. They reached out to us about the same time we had Women in Aviation Day and asked us for a sponsorship to help send their team of students to compete at the MRO America's competition this year. So this agenda item is to consider approving up to a $5,000 sponsorship for those students to go compete at this event. And I know, I hope they'll be able to bring home the trophy and show Oklahoma as really truly dedicated to ensuring that our students will be the next greatest, brightest aviation maintenance technicians. So staff recommends approval for this sponsorship. I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
You may call the roll.
Thank you. Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega,
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Okay.
Looks like I'm paying my dues here
You
for
are.
not speaking during the August Aero Education meeting, getting my due part. As you all know, we partner with our Department of Commerce to go to conferences and trade shows throughout the year. This is an opportunity for Oklahoma to showcase aviation aerospace, to bring our companies to these trade shows to help them interact with their business partners. It's also an opportunity for us to do economic development recruitment to the state of Oklahoma. Throughout all these events, our first and foremost hat that we wear is come bring your business to Oklahoma or expand a unit of your business in Oklahoma. We also want to make sure that the existing businesses and partners that we have there with us are able to go out and meet new customers and new opportunities at a lesser cost than if they're having to exhibit by themselves. Typically throughout the year, we'll bring these to you about 2 months, 3 months beforehand, but seeing that 2023 and hearing from some comments from some commissioners of, well, let's try and knock all these out at the beginning of the year. Here we are, January 2023. We're going to knock all these out at once. And so I'm going to go through this list. It is a consent docket. If you all would like to consider any one of these individually or all of them individually, we certainly are welcome to do so. Otherwise, a consent docket would be approval for the group. Item number A is HAI, or the Helicopter Association International. As you all know, we have a lot of our aviation aerospace businesses out there that are doing jet engine MRO work. We also are very interested in HAI's role in unmanned aircraft systems and advanced air mobility. This will be Atlanta, Georgia, March 6th through the 9th. Item B, MRO Americas Conference that we just talked about, April 18th through the 20th in Atlanta, Georgia. This, of course, is our primary mission, or primary piece of the industry here in Oklahoma is MRO. We have a pretty big group of companies that comes with us to this particular trade show. And of course, one of the most exciting parts is that competition, getting to see the students succeed. Item C is AUVSI, or the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. This is the drone show, commonly referred to as the drone show, May 8th through the 11th in Denver, Colorado. This is one that obviously we like to partner on commerce as well as bringing OSU to the table with all their UAS research and development and all the great things that we're doing. As this industry is continuing to grow in Oklahoma, we want to be able to stake our flag in the ground at AUVSI and say Oklahoma is a leader on all things UAS and AAM. Item D is the Paris International Air Show. This is the partner show to Farnborough that we went to last summer. As you all know, Paris and Farnborough alternate. In odd years, it's in Paris. Even years, it's in Farnborough. June 19th through the 25th in Paris, France. Governor is going to this show. This is one of our main central trade missions from the international perspective. Last year in Farnborough, we had over 80 Oklahomans participate in our booth, 15 different companies, about 8 different other public entities that were partners, and we had quite the booth there at Farnborough, and this is just to continue that success. Item E is the Experimental Aircraft Association Air Venture, or as we all know it as Oshkosh. I will say here we do have a little typo. It is actually July 24th through the 30th, not June 24th. Oshkosh this year, we know this is going to be, Senator Inhofe's last year was his last Oshkosh. He assures me he's going to come, though, as a private citizen, so we welcome him there. I do know the governor is coming back. He went to Oshkosh for the first time as a governor representing the state last year and really, truly enjoyed that. And so hopefully we're going to be able to get the governor to come back to Oshkosh and lead our Saturday luncheon that we have every single year. And then last but not least is NBAA in October 17th to the 19th in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we're all about business aviation and trying to recruit more of our business aviation friends to come to Oklahoma, as well as hitting up our business aviation MRO friends, which are there, trying to get them to bring their MRO businesses to the state of Oklahoma. So that concludes our partnerships with the Department of Commerce for the year. I will stand for any questions. Staff recommends approval for this consent document. As I mentioned earlier, if any commissioner would like to pull one of these out or all of them out and vote them individually, you are welcome to do so.
Questions? Director, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this more or less than we've done in the past?
So the only quote-unquote new is HAI. So HAI is one, last year we attended as just simply people. So we had a couple of people from our office, Commerce went. There wasn't enough attention from the industry yet to develop a state booth, but Commerce has found several partners, and this year they are wanting to do a state booth. So that's the only new one to the portfolio from what was approved last year was HAI.
And the dollar levels have stayed about the same?
Dollar levels are all the same. Yep.
Okay. Any, go ahead.
I am curious, did we get any kind of return on the Paris International Air Show last year?
Farnborough? Yeah, last year it was in Farnborough. Yeah, we had a lot of company visits. We had over 75 company visits while we were there. I don't know any of those have made the decision to come to Oklahoma yet, but I know that at least 8 have visited Oklahoma and are hot on the trail of trying to recruit them here.
I'm curious what the actual conversion rate or what the actual return is in terms of dollar for what we spend. Have we actually brought anybody in from the Paris Show?
Yes, so several over the last probably, we'll call it 8 or 9 international trade shows. There's at least a half dozen companies that have come to the state based on going to that show. So Farah Engineering and Grove is one that came out of, I don't know if it was Paris or Farnborough, but came out of the International Air Show. And I can certainly get you a list of those companies that have come from those international trade shows because of those investments and actually participating and going to that. So
When they come in, do we give them additional tax breaks for locating here?
yes, that's part of the incentive package. So whether they're taking advantage of quality jobs or the engineer tax credits for aerospace or some of the P3 financing programs that are out there, Commerce Works, all those economic development deals and all those incentives on a project by project basis. And they come up with when a company says, all right, we're going to bring our company, it's going to be 50 jobs or 100 jobs, this is the salary. Commerce works up an incentive package that says, okay, if you're bringing X to the state, here's what the state can provide you. And then that's on top of, if the locality itself is providing any kind of incentive. So we see, Tulsa, Oklahoma City obviously have some good incentive packages. Some of our smaller communities, whether it's Norman, Ardmore, Stillwater, you name it, they'll also have some local incentive packages to bring those companies here to the state.
For each of these expenditures, and we make these every year with the exception of HAI, that's a new one. Is there a way to break out every one of them, the objective is to bring business to Oklahoma, clearly.
Yep.
Can we quantify which businesses that came to Oklahoma go with which event?
Certainly,
Is there
yeah.
any way to tie it back?
We can work with our commerce friends and see. I know they keep track of this event. This is where the conversation started with this company. And just to go to show you, one of the companies that we had been recruiting was at 3 or 4 of these shows. And so the conversation started at one, but then progressed to the other. They started seeing Oklahoma. When we first met them, Oklahoma wasn't even on their radar screen. Never occurred to them to relocate to Oklahoma. But by the 3rd or 4th time that we had visited them at a trade show, they finally realized, wow, Oklahoma is serious about aviation aerospace. And so it's those long continued conversations that it's not the first time. You don't go simply talk to a person, say, hey, come to Oklahoma, and they're going to come the next day. It's a continued conversation. And so, yeah, we can work with our Department of Commerce, and they keep track of all those records of here's the companies we met, here's where the conversation started, here's where it continued on
If they
to.
can associate how many jobs from which show or how they link those.
Right.
In my own business, 10 years ago, I was doing 30 trade shows a year, U.S. fleet.
Right.
About 5 years ago, we sit down and reevaluated what's actually getting us a return, what isn't, and we were able to knock 10 of those off that list with absolutely zero impact.
Right.
And it's not just the dollars you spend, it's the transportation, the hotel rooms for the personnel, it's everything that goes
Correct.
into it. So simply because we spend $5,000 to co-exhibit or whatever at a show, the expenses run well past that.
Right.
And I just would like to know that we're getting a return on the shows we're going to and not wasting money on shows that don't get us a return.
Correct. And that's certainly first and foremost in our mind. Commerce goes to more shows than you're seeing here
I'm sure they
on
do.
this list. And so we, as an organization, look at what's the core shows
And
that.
that's their job.
Yeah, and that's their responsibility. So what's the core shows that we want to help support them on to be seen as, here's our role. We partner with Commerce on the ACES program to support them and make sure that we're helping the industry grow as a state. And so it has ebbed and flowed. We've not always gone to Oshkosh. We've not always gone to NBAA. HII is a new one that's to the mix. But that's kind of, I look to Commerce because that's their, expertise. And so I judge that based on them, and then they can help me provide that data to you and others that want to see some of those ROIs.
I would like to see the ROIs, and I would point out that Commerce's job is to bring the jobs.
Right,
Our job is to keep those jobs,
correct.
is to support the airports and the aviation community to make sure that we hold on to those jobs once we get them here.
Right,
Commerce is sales, we're support.
right. No, I agree.
Okay.
Any further questions? I'll entertain a motion, and this would be for the consent docket unless you want to pull any of the individual ones out.
Motion to approve entirely.
Okay.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega,
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
All right.
Thank you.
Item 18.
Item 18, the Unmanned Aerial Systems, Advanced Air Mobility, Collaboration, and Airspace Data Management Initiatives. That's a mouthful, yes. We've discussed UAS and AAM collaboration with other states and data management, and airspace management from the get-go. That's been one of the challenges that with this new upcoming technology, how do we control the airspace? How do we control these different things throughout this upcoming segment of the industry? One of the challenges that we have as a state is, we have been a little bit behind the 8 ball. We're coming up and we're trying to be seen as an up-and-comer, but there was a time where we really were exceeded by North Dakota, New York, other states like that. North Carolina comes to mind, Ohio comes to mind. And so what can we do as a state to put ourselves on the map? And so about 2 to 3 years ago, we started having some conversations with the state of Virginia. And as Virginia was coming up and developing some airspace programs and in developing a really robust UAS program, we started becoming closer with Virginia to figure out a way on how can maybe Oklahoma or some other states piggyback on what these states are doing. Obviously, we could go off and make our own. That's going to be more time-consuming, more expensive to do that, and probably not necessarily as good given the fact that we hadn't gotten the support for UAS on the state level that we had in the last years. And so at the end of the day, we will probably have some agenda items coming to you in future meetings for your approval. But at the end of the day, we're looking at some airspace data management, not from a regulatory standpoint at this point in time. We don't want to force people's hands to use this different system or that system versus this. It'll still be voluntary. But we believe if we can offer the flying public, the UAS industry, a system that identifies here's the sensitive areas of where you could fly, where you maybe shouldn't be flying, or here's where other flying activities are taking place. Let's say a first responder is putting up a drone to survey an accident scene, and they don't want necessarily other drones to impact that. We don't want to have a drone-to-drone type collision in the airspace. And so those kinds of situations play out and will continue to play out as UAS become more and more used, especially as drone delivery comes on board. We've heard about Walmart and Amazon and some of the other testing that's going on in other states, and we're looking at drone delivery and maybe some BVE loss, beyond visual line of sight, delivery opportunities as FAA changes the regulations. And so we want to be ready as a state because we do have significant UAS operations on the testing side. We do have some UAS operations happening in the public safety sector and public safety arena. And we hope that the Amazon and the Walmarts and the other drone delivery companies of the world will come to Oklahoma. And so one of the things that we're talking about is this Advanced Air Mobility Airspace Data Management Initiative. Just as an example, Virginia created something called the Flight Information Exchange. Alaska, Central California have adopted it. I know Utah and Pennsylvania are also looking to adopt it, and we've been having some serious conversations with Virginia. And so I just want to brief you on some of those things because it's important for our agency, it's important for the state of Oklahoma, it's important for our role to be seen as this go-to player for UAS and AAM moving forward. But where exactly do we move forward, and how do we become a player? We don't want to take over everything. That's more than what we can bite off. But we want to be seen as the integrator, the facilitator, and try to move forward. And this goes to our advanced air mobility initiatives that Doug Wood's been doing and that we're working with the Secretary on for the Advanced Mobility Council, and in the strategic planning initiatives that we've talked about in meetings past for how do we set up our state as a UAS leader moving forward. And so I just want to brief you on that high level. And Doug, do you want to come up and add anything to the discussion? Because I think you're going to see in future meetings some approval items that are going to be coming forward, and just want to brief you on a few of those and give you just a little taste before we bring some of those other items to your attention.
Without getting too deep into the weeds, this is essentially, at the basic level, a UAS NOTAM system to allow both manned and unmanned aircraft to have a knowledge of what's going on in the airspace. For example, I had a meeting yesterday with Oklahoma City Police Department and their drone unit, and they're working on getting permission from the FAA to have a 3-mile radius to operate a drone beyond visual line of sight under a certificate of authorization. And they're looking at what's called a drone-in-a-box system, where they would have drones positioned around the city in essentially big boxes that would be kept there, and they would be flown from a remote location, probably dispatch or someplace similar. This is called a Drones as a First Responder program, which was first championed in Chula Vista, California. And they would be able to launch those drones remotely beyond visual line of sight and not have people on site controlling those drones. They'd be controlled from a room just like this with large TV monitors. And so having the ability to put that information up about their own drone operations, as well as know that Amazon is flying from this place to this place, and Amazon is now notified, hey, we're putting this drone up in this area, you need to avoid it. You need to reroute your traffic around that. Or in the future, medevac flights would be notified that this drone is going up because we have a barricade suicide or something that we're working on here. So the whole purpose behind this system eventually is to control that low altitude airspace and give information to those up and coming technologies. So, and I'll stand for any questions. There's a whole lot more involved in that, but that's at the basic level how it would work.
So this would be a statewide initiative?
Yes, the state would purchase the license and be in partnership with the state of Virginia, which has essentially the database, and would bring all of that infrastructure to us, and then we would manage and operate it here. So there'd be no cost to the local agencies or anything like that.
How many drones statewide, do you know? I mean,
As far as
just like,
currently,
yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, the city of Oklahoma has 16 drones currently assigned
Okay.
specifically to their traffic unit. Sergeant Dax Laporte is the drone team leader that is kind of controlling everything that goes on, but they have him in their crime scene unit. They have him, they're running a drones as a patrol responder program, so they have 16 drones in the trunks of patrol cars right now. That's just here. And, you know, the medical examiner's office at the state has, I believe, 4, 3 in Tulsa and 1 here, and they're acquiring some more. So, and that's just 2 agencies.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now bring Director back up, talk about Oklahoma Aero Foundation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, this is, I know, something that Commissioner Hunter has had discussions about in the past, and how can we go about finding a organization to help move forward the aviation aerospace needle beyond what we just do as a state government agency? And so the conversation had come up about a foundation, and that, you know, there would be people that would potentially donate to a foundation for flight scholarships, for events, for trying to bring more AOPA to the classroom, you name it. And so having some conversations, probably over the last 12 months or so with Sandra, with our council, with some of the other agencies of the state that have foundations that benefit those mission, their agency's mission, we've kind of come to the conclusion that it is ripe for us to potentially stand up a foundation. And so that's what this agenda item is before you today, is to allow us as staff to begin the process of establishing a nonprofit foundation for the benefit of the industry and to support the agency's overall mission of aviation aerospace, promotion of aeronautics, so on and so forth. We'll also need to enter into some contracts and agreements, because obviously we do not have the expertise ourselves to do this kind of thing. The name of the foundation, the charter, the bylaws, obviously all that framework will come back to you for approval before we all say submit to the entities that we need to say submit to. But I think this is going to help. I think this will help our mission as an agency. I know there's a lot of people, for example, those simulators that were donated to us about a little over a year ago. There's some other donations that have been discussed to potentially send to the Aeronautics Commission. And while we certainly as a government agency have in our law to be able to receive some of those gifts, it certainly is easier and simpler sometimes to have a foundation accept those gifts from a nonprofit status and a tax status. And so I want us to have that conversation. I think we can structure a foundation the right way that benefits the agency, but also benefits aviation aerospace, and allows us to move a little bit more freely and be able to do some of the things that are like Women in Aviation Day or Aero Day at the Capitol, or some of the other events that we put on a regular basis for the overall benefit of the agency and benefit of aviation aerospace throughout the state. And I just having some preliminary conversations with some of the other agencies, having some preliminary conversations with some aviation nonprofits, I think the potential out there is pretty foundational, for pun intended there, for what we can do. And I think it's just going to be able to expand our opportunities even further for what we can do to serve aviation aerospace. And, you know, who knows what's going to shake loose from the tree to be able to get donations, to be able, once we've stood this up, you know, the Air Force Association, OAOA, ODIA, those are all associations and have foundations that are associated with them. But I think if we had our own as a state government entity, it would help us be able to run some of these events a little smoother. I know it'll allow staff to be able to organize and orchestrate a little bit more efficiently some of the things that we already do. And then where we can go from the future, who knows? Can we develop a full-on flight scholarship program? Maybe. Can we develop a program that is able to give grants to the AOPA schools? Maybe. I want to investigate all those. But the first step is developing that foundation and moving into the various steps and procedures and seeing some of the lists that you need to develop. It is daunting. And so staff has considered this. We're recommending it for approval. I'll stand obviously for any questions or comments or even suggestions of the commission for names, ideas, thoughts, so on and so forth.
Questions? So basically, this motion would be to say proceed.
Correct.
And doing the fact-finding and shape it.
Yep, fact-finding, shaping, development of all the preliminary documents that would be needed to submit to the various organizations, whether it's, you know, the Secretary of State's office, the IRS, so on and so forth, for the starting of a foundation. And, you know, the bylaws and some of the other charter and other documents would obviously have to come back to you for approval once we've created those. But this is for us to take that initial step and bring on some expertise to allow us to do that.
That shouldn't be a complicated or expensive process. Most lawyers can do that for you with a couple of hours of time.
Right. Right.
It's not a days or weeks or months thing.
I agree. And that's, I mean, we've had we're not charting new routes here. I mean, we've got the Wildlife Foundation as an example. OETA has a foundation. I know OSBI had a foundation at one time. There are several state agencies out there that have foundations that benefit them, and so we're working through that, trying to figure out, okay, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and, you know, no need to reinvent the wheel.
This gives you the opportunity to go to private industry and say, you know, it'd be really nice if you would contribute to this foundation over here that gives out the flight school scholarships.
Yep.
It's a tool that provides a layer of separation. There are a number of benefits to having an autonomous but connected.
Right. Just another tool in the toolbox. Keep the airplane flying. That is OAC.
Any other comments, questions? If not, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Please call the roll.
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Sandra, will you cover review of upcoming events?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have come to that wonderful time, Commissioners, where it is me and you and saying farewell. We've had an exciting day. The Oklahoma City Thunder has organized an student Aero Day, and it's this Friday. Michelle and I and probably a bunch of staff are going to go over there, and they have 300 students, and so they're going to have industry come in. Paula and I have worked with industry, and so a lot of aerospace companies are coming in to talk to the students. Justin Lewis is bringing the microjet somewhere. He's going to put it on the Thunder Hall there for Friday night. If you want tickets, if you want to join us at the game, just come and see me, and I'll be happy to make those arrangements. Southeastern Oklahoma State University is having an aviation day on February 17th. And the Oklahoma Defense Industry Association is having a legislative reception on February 22nd, 2023, and that is at the Capitol Event Center. If you would like tickets to that, would you please see me after the meeting, and I will make sure. It's a great event for defense, for aerospace and defense, and we are happy to partner with them on that at no charge, Commissioner Hunter. The Heli Expo is March 6th through 9th. Prior STEM Day is March 9th. Aero Day at the Capitol is March 22nd, and I would love to have you come out and help us with that. That is not me doing that, by the way. That's Eric Leslie back there teasing us in the back room. The OAOA Annual Conference is March 26th through 29th at Monkey Island, Oklahoma, and MRO Americas is April 18th through the 20th. As we go into the flying season, I'm sure in March I'll have many more events for you guys. So thank you so much. I yield for any questions.
I would point out that you do this to me every single year, the Aero Oklahoma Day Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
Why does that always fall on every public school's spring break? It always falls during spring break, and if I'm taking my kid and we're flying someplace, guess what? I can't be there for
Is it spring break that day?
It is during that week.
It is?
Spring break is that week in March. Every year. And then you look at me and you wonder why I'm not there.
I'm sorry. I'll do better next year.
Those with kids you gotta go somewhere, right?
Commissioner Ortega, get in here with me. Get in here. I know you know, getting a day at the Capitol is,
Pulling teeth.
it is like pulling teeth. And these people vie for those dates, and getting a day where we're not competing with another organization. Come on, Commissioner Ortega.
It has. It's changed. The climate's changed quite a bit, so
Yes.
the capital is not as readily available as it used to be. So there's a lot of conflict in scheduling
Yes.
events sometimes, so.
That's what he said, sir.
I get it.
Can I go now, please?
I'm a good person.
Any other questions before we let you go?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 21, I'll entertain any questions to go. Any other questions up here?
I just offered mine.
Okay. Our next meeting will be 10 a.m. Wednesday, March 8th, 2023. Same location. Are there any questions? Any new business? Mr. Director, okay, all right. If not, I move for motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega,
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
I declare this meeting adjourned.